Welcome to Oregon Voters Digest, the program that brings forward the social and political issues that are important to people living here in the Pacific Northwest. And now, your host, Bruce Broussard.
Welcome again to this segment of the Oregon Voters Digest. I'm Bruce Broussard, your host, and guess what? I've got the whole team with me again today. For those of you who have been familiar with the shows of late, you recognize these guys. You know, we got Fred Stewart. Bob Williams, Jack Kerfoot, and Dwight Minnieweather. Okay, these guys are all on, and I think we're going to have maybe a couple more guests coming here on. Joe Bean Kelly. For those of you who have been living in the Portland area, you know Joe Bean, besides being a musician and whatever. And unfortunately, he lost one of his sons back in the early days. But anyway, he's in Washington. He went to Washington just of late, and to basically participate in the march and the festivities, the March on Washington. And that was quite a festivities. If you had the opportunity to see it yesterday, it was awesome. I checked that out. In fact, it was on the same date that they convened the Republican convention, basically on the same day aspect of it, the same days basically. But anyway, there's a lot of activities that have been going on right here, as you know. Coronavirus. I mean, and then the shootings and all kinds of deals and protesting and the like and whatever. So I tell you what, we're just gonna if Joe Bean gets on, we're gonna have him give us a little update on his experience there in the Washington March aspect of it. I thought it was a very interesting piece. I might add that particular date was the anniversary of Emmett Till. I still remember that because I was in the Marine Corps when that happened. But anyway, that was that issue, and Emmett Till, and then Dr. King, when they basically went to march on Washington aspect of it. So there's a lot of things that were happening during that particular time, and like I said, we basically ended up with the convention of the Republican Party and then the Democratic Party aspect of it, and we had an additional shooting, if you will, up in Wisconsin. Another black was shot 7 times in the back by police, if you will, in that area. And again, there's all kinds of issues come up about that particular piece. I'm throwing that out to you to say that you really can't cover all of the news and activities. There's no way you can cover all the news and activities. So I'm just going to suggest to you that you take one, or you take two, or you look at the news deal or whatever, and just don't get too excited about it, because there's a lot of stress there. There's an upcoming election come November 3rd, and I would suggest you try to prepare for that. I mean, that's going to be very important. And you try, if you will, to get your voters pamphlet and look at the background of those individuals that are running for office. That's a job in itself. Okay, got me? But today, what we're going to do, these guys are indirectly, they're journalists in their own rights, or researchers and the like, and whatever. They're very active in their various communities and their endeavors. And so what we're going to do now, we're just going to just go around the table here and just ask these individuals what they feel about certain events and whatever. We'll just kind of go through that. And then if we get a special guest like Joe Bean Kelly from Portland, he can kind of give us a better feel of what's happening down there in the Washington situation that he was there personally, okay, with some other individuals from the Portland metropolitan area. So with that, let's open this thing up, and we're gonna give the Army a first shot. We're gonna give Jack Kerfoot the opportunity to say, Jack, what struck you in last week's the last week issues that happens?
Well, I think the first question is, after over 90 days of violence that we've had, what is the root cause of the problem? And I went back and did a little research, and I found in the Portland Mercury an article of May 17th, 2017, 3 years ago, and it's called Get to Know an Anarchist. Well, to an anarchist, all government institutions are evil. They see it as simply any government, whether it's the police, the federal government, the state government, the city government, is an exercise ruling over the people. And they do not believe in any form of organization whatsoever. And they have had, in fact, this article was written after a group of anarchists went out and destroyed federal property and city property in Portland on May Day 2017, and there were 25 arrests that were there. My biggest concerns are the Black Lives Matter movement, I fear, is being hijacked in Portland by a group of anarchists that have a very different agenda. And it is not supportive at all of Black Lives Matter. It is simply supportive of their own initiative, which is to overthrow the standing government, federal, state, city, county government. So what struck me over the past week is the fact that unfortunately, our news media are really not reporting the in-depth issues. I hear them talking to individuals, but I really don't see in-depth reporting, which is disappointing for a city of our size.
Okay. All right, Bob.
Yes.
What was your highlight for last week?
Well, my highlight has been I'm an avid sports fan, and I was watching the NBA when Doc Rivers, when they interviewed him, and he made a statement that brought me to tears. And that is that Black people love America, but America don't love them back. And then to see all of the people that are finding reason not to support or to call for a change that are out there. I didn't watch the Republican convention for one reason. I didn't want them to get the amount of people that the Nielsen report that watched them. So my idea, all of the negativity that's going on around everything, instead of people trying to sit down and figure out how do we all come together. When I was in South Africa, Mandela made one statement that I never forgot. He said to the South Africans when the uprising was beginning, we have to remember that we are all South Africans, not a color, not a nationality, but we are all South Africans. And someone needs to say that to us in America. We're not white America or Black Americans or Asian Americans. We got to drop all of that and become Americans. And that way we can all survive in this pandemic. We can all survive in this strive to be better than things were before.
Okay. Thank you very much, Bob. How about Dwight? Is he there?
Yeah. I was sitting there thinking about how what I've taken from the whole situation is that communication has actual mechanics. And the mechanics of communication for good, solid communication is you started off without offending. And once you offend somebody, the conversation's over. They're not going to really hear what you're saying. They don't want to hear what you're saying because you just offended them. And on the other end, to receive the conversation, you got to be able to listen without defending. And I think right now what's happening is that no one's listening to nobody and everybody's defending what they believe in. I mean, it's just like, okay, well, when are you just going to let me finish? But when I come out and I don't say things that are positively able to let us communicate, then it becomes offensive. And at that point, we're doing nothing but yelling and screaming at each other. We're arguing. We're not solving nothing. We're not resolving anything. But the problem is we're watching people say, I don't want to hear nothing from the other side. I don't want to hear nothing from the other side. And it's going to be a whole story that's going to kind of pan out what's really happening. It won't be one half. It won't be the left. It won't just be the right. It's going to be everything and the people in the middle of the left and the right. There are some people in the middle that are, just waiting to hear what is the big argument going to end up to be, what is going to be the policy changes, what's going to really happen, because we've seen our cities burnt up. So now we're waiting for the next part. What's next?
Thanks very much. Okay, Bob. I'm sorry. Where's Fred? Fred's there?
I'm here.
Fred, where are you?
I'm here.
Okay, good. What do you think? What's your highlight for last week?
Well, my highlight of the last week is, just people are trying to figure out what to do. I mean, I'm seeing more and more white people stepping up because that's what's needed. Only white people can fight this fight. It's not enough black people to do it. Mm-hmm. And if you've noticed, one of the things that a lot of people don't think about is over the last 90 days of these protests, there have been more white people killed in these protests than black people. White people fighting black people. White people fighting white people. I mean, there's been a few black people, like Mr. David Dorn and a few others, but most of the people have lost their lives. I mean, even here in Portland, we've had more white people go to jail, get hurt, go to the hospital, get killed, fighting racism. And I think this thing is going to continue to grow. And we're going to have to come up with a solution. I also agree with what Jack noticed. You know, I'm much more angry about it because this has been going on for a while. Both the white supremacists and Antifa have been trying to co-opt the Black Lives Matter protest for their own agenda. And our media people, they're not listening to the cops. The cops have been screaming this. This has been going on. And because the media, unfortunately, doesn't recognize it, then the people we vote for, they don't feel like they need to address it because the people that vote for them aren't talking about it enough like Jack did. I mean, not one person that's elected right now is thinking about what Jack said. And if Jack said it to them, the first thing they're going to think of is, well, is it in the Willamette Week? Is it in the Oregonian? That's where our journalists, unfortunately, becoming very important. The fact that they're not noticing it means it's not getting noticed. And Jack's 100% right. What he's seeing, and he's not the only one that's saying it. And that is not good for us, especially here in Portland, because it means the worst of the violence hasn't gotten here yet. It's going to get worse. It's going to get a lot worse.
Okay.
Until we start taking the bull by the horns. And the first thing that we got to do that is start talking truth. Start paying attention to truth.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Fred. You know, guys, I noticed that we didn't bring the issue here locally home that I think is very, very important, and people are pretty well frustrated about it, and that is our leadership, our leadership. And I'll just be straight up with it, and I'm talking about the mayorship. The mayorship is a very, very, and we're getting ready to go in that phase, like Fred was saying, it's going to get worse. It continues to get worse, and we're internationally known now throughout the world, for that matter. I mean, in the presidential election, they bring up our name. I mean, it's all across the board. And we've been here long enough to know that that should not have been the case. A lot of things should have happened. And our present mayor, if you will, and the media, just like what Fred was saying in terms of how the media does it, whether it be the Willamette Week or the Oregonian. But they never mentioned the fact that he's in a runoff with a second person. And in all due respect, they've never asked the person who's in the runoff with the mayor, just what do you think about this issue? Well, what resolutions do you have? They've never said anything. Well, in all due respect, in doing so, we're going to have that person. We're going to have that candidate on next week. You know, if you don't know her name, you probably didn't vote, but maybe you have voted for her. It was Sarah Enneroth, and we're going to have her. And like Fred was made point about the whole issue with Antifa and Patriot Prayer and whatever along that particular line. You know, that was an association with her campaign. You know, in regards to Antifa. Well, I've had some time to spend some time with her. Just happened to have known the campaign manager, and I had a couple of the guys that are on there now that we've been talking about this whole piece, all of you for that matter. Anyway, we're going to have her on, and we're going to ask her those questions. Basically, say what's wrong here? What would you have done if you're mayor? Because right now we've got two people that one of them going to be mayor next round. The one of the people just happened to be sitting in that chair, and we're not getting anything, any response in there, and it really just tears us up. And so I think that's going to be a very interesting interview. I'm very familiar with her campaign manager, and the rest of you guys also too. We had him on the show, and he's a very active young man, right here, born and raised here in Portland, and whatever. And so I think we're going to try to see if we can get something on the table to try to avert what Fred was saying, and that is that if it's going to get worse, we definitely wouldn't like the idea of having Portland at the front of the heat because we got things like Sanctuary City. You know what I mean? Anybody and everybody can come here. You can do anything you want to do. The gate is open for that matter. And you don't if you get arrested, so what? And so right, I want to throw that out for sure. Now, going on with that piece, what would be your response at this point in time? Let's set it up. Let's set it up for that next meeting in regards to our present leadership here in the mayor's office. And do you think that the media is fair by basically not allowing the other candidate that's running in this runoff to be questioned and ask those questions? Let's start off with you, Fred. What do you think?
I mean, how can Ted keep her from being questioned? I mean, she's going to be on this show. I'm sure you're going to ask her good questions. I mean, I think both of them need to step up more, show more leadership. I mean, Sarah, I'm not putting her down or nothing, but Sarah's not acting like she has any solutions yet. And Ted sure as heck. I mean, Ted's in the position right now. I mean, right now, guys, we've had the largest loss in 1 month of law enforcement in Oregon history. The largest loss. And between now and the end of September, we're going to have about 200 police officers that were police officers January 1st of this year, no longer police officers. We're going to be 200 cops down. And, I know they're trying to run a campaign. They're trying to, win a campaign, but this is a critical problem to Portland, period. It is going to mean we're going to be less safer in the city of Portland, no matter how you slice it. And not just in Northeast Portland like the good old days. You know what I'm talking about? We're talking about the entire city. And how are they going to handle the protest if they continue? What if Trump wins? Do you think we're going to have more or fewer protests if Trump wins? I think we're going to have protests regardless, but which one do you think is going to be hotter?
Okay.
Thank
you, buddy. Okay, Dwight, what do you think?
Well, I'm sitting there looking at how the situation is going as far as not understanding any of the people that are running for the seat, not having any information really about what a solution is going to be, and really not having either. But, I'm interested in finding out, who Sarah is and what's going on with her and ask her those questions so we can have a fair chance to even look at her. I did some research myself, and I realized that she could step up in a couple of areas and let herself be known, but it doesn't seem like I see anything that we should be frightened of or afraid that if she came in a position. But it's just, again, it's like, what are you here for, Sarah? What are you going to do? What's going on? And she needs to just get out here and make herself known. Just start talking so we can hear her. But Ted,
Okay, good point.
Ted.
All right, let's see if we can switch it up and then get in. Okay, internet connection is unstable. Okay, good. All right, then. So, Robert, what do you think? Do you think media has been being fair and honest with her by basically getting around there and asking her those questions?
For me,
comparable to that of our present mayor?
Well, I'm from that old school that says that if I'm running, I'm going to get noticed. And if the situation is larger than the person, which it appears to be with her and with him, it's a situation where the people have to say, wait a minute, and force them to say something or to take some type of action so that you will see where they are coming from. Because to allow them to sit still and do nothing, shame on you.
Okay.
That's and to elect someone that says, I'm not going to arrest or I'm not going to prosecute criminals, you need to be recalling that person. That's just my feel about the whole thing in Portland, Oregon. It's horrible.
Okay. Jack, what do you think? You think media has been fair with her? Has been calling out?
Well, a few days ago, 2 days ago, I believe, Mayor Wheeler gave what I would characterize, with all due respect, as a feeble press conference, saying it was time to stop the violence. And my first reaction was, Mayor Wheeler, where have you been for the last 3 months? Are you aware that there's a Black Lives Matter movement? Are you aware of the destruction and devastation that's occurred in downtown Portland? Bruce, I've led men in combat and I've led turnaround organizations, multi-billion-dollar organizations around the world. And I know leadership, and I know leaders. And with all due respect, in my opinion, Ted Wheeler is not a leader. I think it is time that our local media stepped up and critically evaluated both candidates, Mayor Wheeler and Sarah Ingram. We have to recognize that to campaign to get the nomination for president for both parties, candidates are put under intense scrutiny and coverage by the media. We have not had that in our mayor election and in the runoff. And it is time the newspapers, the networks, the bloggers all stepped up and started asking our two candidates for mayor, what is their position and what are their solutions?
Okay, all right. Now we covered that particular piece. But let's talk about another area that's sort of somewhat vague. I think about our only Republican representative in Congress. What am I thinking about? Just to show you about the name deal, thinking about his name, you don't see him that much. You know what I'm saying? We've got one Republican that's in Congress. Okay, who knows that name? And that's
Greg Walden.
Greg Walden. But you see what I'm saying? So foreign, and the guy almost sits right there in the president's office. I mean, he's right at the top of the heap, for that matter. And I've not heard anything from the standpoint of being an involvement from his particular perspective. I do know that he has since says that he's basically going to get out of the business. I mean, there's a run for that office at that point in time. But more the better is that he should be able to come to the table and talk to that issue. Maybe educate us about why is the president so insistent about sending federal troops? I mean, to me, there's no such thing as sending federal troops. All he has to do is just basically activate the National Guard, federalize them. You need to get that done overnight. You know what I'm saying? And I think that would be the most effective group anyway, because these are just hometown folks, right here in Oregon, more particularly right here in Portland. You could activate the National Guard and say, look here, Governor, we want to get the troops from the Portland metropolitan area. And a number of folks have been who are actually participating in the Guard, including police. A number of policemen that are in the Guard and picking up their points along that particular line also. So I'd hope that Greg would have kind of gotten involved a little bit more with reference to being at the table, if you will, to deal with some of those issues and educate us all as a whole. Because when you start talking about the president and saying, well, gee, we don't want these government troops. It still is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And these are not foreigners. I mean, these folks are here in the USA. And I'm saying I think that Greg would give some contribution. What do you think, Fred? You brought the name up. What do you think? Have you met him before?
Well, Greg is, he's doing what most politicians do who are, lame ducks. He's not saying nothing because there's no reason for him to. It's up to the candidates that are running. So I'm more concerned about what the Democrat and the Republican who's trying to replace him are saying. But if you look in general, in Oregon, our politicians, none of them are really responding. I mean, Joanne's probably doing the best, but she's still, she's still learning. Joanne's still learning. She's doing, fine enough. Of course, I would love her to do better. But as a whole, as a community, the people that we have elected to lead us, they're not leading on this issue. They're too scared. They're worried about saying something or doing something and becoming unpopular. And that's not what a leader does. Leader doesn't do things necessarily because they want people to love them. You're always, especially at city council, the best city commissioner, the most popular mayor, probably has no more at any given time than half the people in Portland supporting them. That's just the nature of the job. That's just the nature of the job. And that's what's disappointing when I'm looking over at Ted, because he's there. And, I'm a little concerned with Sarah. I mean, I don't have any axe to grind against Sarah. I'm kind of, like Dwight, I don't see anything, glaring that says, hey, this is a threat to the city or anything like that. But I am disappointed I'm not seeing her step up to the plate and talk about what she will do to address the concerns of people with Black Lives Matter, what she will do to protect the citizens of Portland. how she will protect the business interest of downtown Portland, because that is Oregon's #1 employment center, bar none. You hurt downtown Portland, you hurt the state, period. If you want to help black people, the last thing you want to do is take more money out of our pockets. Okay? And that's exactly what these people are doing when they're destroying. Now, white people can afford this better than black folks can. These white kids downtown, attacking the deer, breaking windows, setting fire to police cars, they come from families that can afford this. Most black people in Oregon don't come from families that can afford this.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
So she needs to step up.
Good point. Appreciate that. Got it, guys. Raise your hand. How about Dwight? What do you think?
Well, I'm getting more involved in understanding what Robert was talking about there a while back when he was talking about how it just seems like that when we're dealing with the situation of making sure that everyone's understanding what's being said and what's being done, it seems like it's just being shaded to the point where we're not really getting a true. I'm looking like Kate Brown. I'm looking at all these different people saying, well, what's supposed to happen? What should they be doing? And when I look at it, I see that there's just really the same also position that Fred said, a bunch of fear. I was talking with you the other day, and I told you there's certain things you just, no matter how you feel about them and no matter what's going on in your heart, you just can't say them today because people take them out of content. People make you some other kind of monster. The next thing you know, you won't even be able to go to your own house. You won't be able to walk in your own door. And I just think it's just kind of scary when we got to a point where we're so fearful of doing what's right or making sure what's right is being done, mm-hmm. that we're just jumping in and lumping in with the group. And again, with the whole a part of the protest, for me, I'm just seeing the activity of there's not a separation between the Antifa, whoever are doing the active work, and those who are the peaceful protesters, because like I said, there's no division in between it. It looks like it's all meshed together like it's for one mission. So, for me, it's just really wondering, what's going to happen. We're tore up. Like Fred said, the money's downtown. It ain't nothing down there. There's nothing down there. There's no reason for me to even go down there. The courthouse pretty much ain't reason to go there. If I get a ticket, there's no reason to go down there because, hey, man, they're taking the whole structure. That's right. If I had federal business, I'm going to that building that's painted up like the montage, and if I'm going to the Justice Center, if I'm going to that building that looks like Vietnam,
yeah,
go down there for now.
Okay, gotcha.
See destruction.
Okay, that's Bob. How about it, Bob? Robert, you've been around.
It's an old saying that that these commissioners and the mayor need to understand. Okay. You can please some of the people all the time, but you cannot please all of the people all of the time.
Well, look here.
You're always going to have.
On that particular note, we'll hold your point, and we'll come right back to you after we take a short break. And for those of you who are looking at the show, do like we're doing right now. Get a few folks, get your neighbors together, talk about this thing, because communication is going to play a major role in the solution of all of our problems. Okay? And we'll be right back. Take care. Welcome back to the Oregon Voters Digest. Again, I'm Bruce Broussard, your host, and joining me are basically those individuals who have been with me for quite some time, and we're sort of sharing with the community across the board, right here in the Portland metropolitan area and throughout the state, in fact, throughout the country for that matter. But, it's so important to communicate who we are at this point in time, because we're sort of highlighted as a place where it's just torn all up, and we have nothing to give, and nothing. We don't participate. We're this and that. But in all due respect, we've got some very responsible folks. We were living in the city of roses, trust me. And then we sit between two major states. state of California and the state of Washington. And they do have major activities. And now, and in all due respect, the freeway, actually I-5, the national freeway runs straight through our city of Portland. And folks are constantly stopping here. And we got the, I call it the part of the, was it from a historical standpoint, it generated right here. Didn't it, Fred? The whole issue with the pot deal. I mean, we got a major source for pot, and we're very, very active along that particular line. And in fact, even on that particular note, as I'm talking about this thing, I'm thinking about many of the pot stores, if you will, have been hit big time just recently here. So there's a lot of things going. But anyway, but the bottom line is that we've got a lot of things here. We're very resourceful. We got some real neat folks here in our city, in the city of Portland. You'd be surprised the kinds of folks that are sitting here. Got the Mel Renfros of the world. I think about Mel, and we had some very interesting sport athletes, and we got folks like a guy by the name of Fred Stewart. I don't know if you know him, but he's a very active guy in the community. And then you got Bob in labor and whatever, and you got Dwight, who's a minister. He's on the show here with us too. He's on the show, and then we got a researcher, in fact, with Jack Kerfoot. In fact, Jack ran for office. He ran for city council, a very active person. And so we got some very active people. We got Steve here, who's our technician here that basically coordinates our whole show through Zoom and whatever. And, and I've been around a couple of days or whatever. But the fact of the matter is we've got some very neat folks, and we're doing what we're doing right now because we want to be responsible. We want to make sure that we get back on flow, get back on the right lane, as Dwight says all the time. Get back on the right lane because we need to do that. We have to work together. And so consequently, we have to communicate. And I would suggest that in the other communities throughout the state and throughout this country, we got to get ourselves together because that's what it's all about. It's a together thing. This is the United States of America, and we happen to be one of those. Okay, with that, let's get right back now on the second half of the show. And when we close at this last time around, we were talking to Bob, and Bob had a couple of things on his mind, and we're going to start off with Bob, and then I'll throw out some other things that we'll get back into also. Hey, Bob, go on.
Well, like I was saying, Bruce, it's an old saying as far as your county commissioners are concerned. Your county commissioners, mayor, and city councilors, you can please some of the people all of the time, but you can't please all of the people all of the time. So they need to understand that and begin to do what they consider they were elected for, and do the right thing, and find out from what they think is the right thing, and find out from the people if that's a good thing for them. I mean, it's a sad day when politicians do nothing, and run and hide. But all of us have to remember what all of this started, how it started, and why it started. And I wish Joe Bean was here, because he's a family member. He's my wife's first cousin. And in 1996, he lost his son to police violence.
Right.
I.e., the car was stopped, his son ran away, and they shot him in the back. But I'm not going to tell his story. I know that one day we'll have him on and let him tell his story. Yeah. So we've been fighting this situation for years. And the question becomes, what does it take to stop police from treating us different than they treat everyone else? Slavery is over, and we understand how they came about, but it's time to move into the 21st century, and rather than to maintain things that was easily happening in the 1700s and 1800s. So what does it take for me to feel safe walking out of my house, walking down the street, and not worrying about a police officer shooting me?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the point. I understand gang violence and all of that. You can bring it all into it. But I'm talking about the person that's supposed to be protecting me, killing me. And that's the thing that I worry about.
In fact, you bring a good point about the police beat, and Fred is sort of our authority in that particular arena. Fred, what do you think now at this point in time? Do you think we got a new structure at Portland Police now? We've got the new chief now aspect of it, and look like the mayor is sort of he's more dependent upon him. You notice media has sort of focused on the chief as opposed to the Stewart, police Stewart, and Turner, Daryl Turner. Daryl was on constantly, basically representing the police department and sometimes the mayorship, if you will, which I think that was the wrong lane to take. But what do you think at this point in time? Do you
Well,
think
we're not going to resolve our issues with the police with Daryl Turner, period. They're going to have to get a new representative. We're in a completely new type of realm right now when it comes to law enforcement because we've lost a lot of police officers and we got a lot more that we're going to be losing between now and the end of February. Some people put the estimate as high as 250. I think it's going to be closer to 200. And that's for several reasons. One, we got officers who are retiring and moving to other law enforcement departments around the country because, it's just better for them. I mean, there's better leadership. A lot of cops don't feel safe to be a police officer here. And I'm not talking about they're worried about their safety from the public. They're worried about their safety of their jobs, being able to do what they're trained to do. We're losing, like I said, quite a bit. There is no leadership when it comes to our law enforcement. There is no direction right now. Even though I've got a lot of misgivings about Joanne being the police commissioner, where we're at right now is we know what we've got right now ain't working. Why not try something different? Because we're definitely not on a path of success right now. We've got to recruit new people to come into the police department. They're going to be younger. And we need people who are willing to be part of the solutions and part of the change with law enforcement. And I know the path we're on right now, we're nowhere near going toward that. Nowhere near. We haven't even taken the first step in that journey yet. So why not make a change? Why not make Joanne or even Dan Ryan, police chief? We got it. What do they say? If what you're doing ain't working, you have to do something else. I mean, are we going to expect that one day Ted's going to wake up and just give us what we need? It's not what we want that he's not delivering. It's what we need. He's not delivering. And, I can only imagine, what's going on downtown right now. They're trying to figure out and scramble. What is it going to be like for law enforcement in Portland, Oregon, March of 2021? What is it going to be like? And, I think we're going to have some semblance of hope that things are moving in the right direction at the very least. And if making Joanne or Dan Ryan or Carmen Rubio, and hopefully Mingus, if he gets on, make one of them a police commissioner. I don't want anybody to just get it for no reason. What I'm saying is we've got to be prepared to make some major changes here.
Okay. Good point. Okay. Any more comments from that? Jack, you look like you're nodding about it a bit. What do you think? Want to add to that?
Well, I think the thing that has concerned me consistently is that every time Mayor Wheeler has gotten on the news, he talks as if he is not the commissioner of police. And he is. I'm sorry. That's the position. He's said several times that he is the commissioner of police and he has no intention of giving that position up. And at the same time, he constantly tries to deflect any type of question or any question about what are they going to do differently. The press conference he had 2 days ago, he said, well, I'm going to talk with the chief of police and ask him, what are we going to do? Well, I'm sorry, but that conversation needs to be held with several different groups across the city. And it also needs to be looked at from where do we think the best police departments are in the United States, and what structures do they have, and what training do they have? What do we need to do differently? How can we improve the performance? And also, how can we recruit the type of police officer men and women across this country to Portland. Because right now, with all the negative headlines we're getting, I cannot think of a single person that I know that would want to come here and be a police officer in Portland, Oregon. And that disturbs me.
Yeah. Good point. Good point. Mike, what do you think? From a community standpoint, your ministry, you got your ministry there. What kind of comments are you getting from your parishioners and maybe some of the young folks that you're dealing with, and maybe some of the folks that you're helping out there, either trying to eat, if you will, and stay alive. But what do you think? What do you hear on the streets?
Well, what I'm noticing is I was talking with you guys about the cultivation of this new culture. I think I was sharing that with you. What I'm hearing is this cultivation of this whole new culture that they're creating and cultivating, because culture comes from cultivating. So you don't have that because that's who you are. You can, be cultivated into any culture. So what I'm seeing now is that the people that I'm talking to, they're being cultivated into this whole baitiness of the racism. They're being cultivated into the thought process that they're going to be able to stop a racism that I can't imagine. I'm still trying to figure out, how do you stop violence? People are going to be violent. I mean, how do you say stop it? But when we get to the terms, we stop using words that don't exist for certain situations, like stopping violence. We should be saying we need to prevent as much violence as we can, but to say we're going to stop it, period, and there's going to be no more violence in the earth, this sounds ridiculous to Pastor Minnieweather, because spiritually I know you're not going to stop it. But I'm saying the culture I'm around, they're like, well, when they're going to stop saying stop it and start putting some preventative things in place that's going to allow it not to be as much as we see, how much violence we see in our community, how many people getting shot. See, we're talking about the black on black crime, while others are not talking about that crime because we're black. So when we hang out and we talk and say, man, you hear about little Pookie? He got shot down the road the other night. So it's a conversation we have, but it's not a conversation that's allowed to be had right now because of the new cultivating of the mind. They don't want us to think about the whole picture. They kind of wanted to take this one piece, and I said, okay, we know we got problems with police. We know we have some issues. I said, I mean, this didn't sound. I said, fire them all and find one good guy to start off with, and then we put together some oversight committee, and we rehire the good cops, and we get rid of the bad cops, and make it attractive to be hired here in Portland. Tell them to go work in Texas. We don't want that kind of cop here in Oregon. And once we can screen and maybe get some people who can make sure that when we're rehiring these guys, we're not rehiring the guy who's had 18 involvements with some stuff that sounds shady.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, Bob, you're on as far as the structure of our law enforcement group here in Portland. You think about it, we sort of have it sort of like a union shock type deal, for the labor force. And normally that structure, that was an interesting structure. The structure is that the shop steward is kind of like the manager. He's the spokesperson, if you will, the lead person for contract negotiation and things of that nature. Is this something that you think we could stick around to? Because it's been having its impact on the chain of command, so to speak. The chief is out of that scenario, and even to date, I didn't know whether or not, from what I've known, that the chief was never involved in contract negotiations. They were just, what I mean, the shop steward was the lead, and get together with some of the city officials who didn't have any background whatsoever. And guess who's the smartest person at the table? The shop steward. Okay, now let's talk about that. What do you think? You've been in the union, you've been in that business for years. What do you think?
The number one, the union don't make law. The union doesn't enforce the law. No one in the city hires a union rep to take care of their situation. They elect the mayor, they elect the council, and the mayor hires a chief of police. So everything should be coming top down, not bottom up. And what Portland has done is allowed the union, has allowed the people to use the union as the scapegoat. And why do I say that? Because Daryl's job is to protect his members. That's all. It's not to make law and tell the people of Portland what they should or shouldn't do. He is there to protect his members. And when you attack his members, he responds. That's all. And the people have to understand who is responsible. Right now, no one is acting responsible. Everyone is trying to lay blame. And we got to get out of that system and say, hey, if the mayor says to the chief, here's what I want, here's what the people say they want, then the chief can say, I'm not going to do that, and the mayor fires him. Or the chief would say, I will go and we will begin to do that and tell his troops what to do. And if they don't do it, you fire them. That's the way things work. But right now, we got the cart leading the horse, and we need to stop it.
Okay. Jack, you're nodding your head. What's up?
Well, the role that Daryl Turner plays is an important role, but I've never been in a city, and I've lived in a lot of cities across the U.S. where there have been instances and there have been riots, but this is the only time I've seen that the union president for the law enforcement, for police, has taken such a front and center and active role. And I do understand he wants to protect his people, but he seems to be taking it a step beyond what I've seen other union presidents have taken in the past, to a degree. In fact, to an observer that doesn't know any better, they would think that Daryl Turner is the chief of police. And the perception sometimes becomes reality. And that battling, sometimes the best way to achieve positive results is to take it off the newspaper headlines and the media headlines and to sit down and work through the issues that have to be resolved. The big issue that has to be resolved by the union and the city council in the next year is the upcoming contract and the policies and procedures in that contract, which includes what is the criteria for termination, what is the criteria for suspension, and any action against a union member. So that is what I would think the president of the union would be focusing on. That would take quite a bit of time. From when I have my experiences with heads of union, takes quite a bit of time of preparation to really be prepared for these upcoming meetings, which is not that far away. I believe it's in March. So I'm surprised by Daryl Turner's actions. Perhaps he can enlighten us, come on your show and enlighten us as to why he's gone down, taken the path he has, because I would like to understand this much more than I do right now.
Thanks, Jack. Okay, Fred, you've been with officers, you've talked with them personally and whatever, and they've shared their feelings and this, that, and the other with you. I'm sure they have, and especially the ones who have retired. And I know you're getting some sort of feedback because you're very interested in it, and they do communicate with you.
If people in the police department, rank and file, had faith in Daryl, they wouldn't be leaving in droves right now. Daryl is working for Daryl. He's not working for the police union. He is right now trying to set himself up so that when he retires next year, he can start a political career in Portland. And that's all that's going on. I mean, I've looked at his last press conferences. I've read the letters that he's written for the Oregonian. I don't see any police issues, any issues pertaining to the contract in those letters or anything. He's attacking the mayor. He's attacking the city council. He is acting like he's a politician already. He's acting like he's chief of police. Mm-hmm. I mean, he doesn't talk about issues publicly that pertain to law enforcement as far as the rank and file members, which is one of the reasons why so many officers are leaving. And they're going to be gone by the last business day of February of 2021. Like I said, some people think it's going to be as high as 250. We're losing like 75 this month. 75. Do you think we are safer with those 75 gone? And let me ask you this. Could that be used or looked at as a vote of no confidence? Because a lot of these guys, they're not leaving the industry of law enforcement. They're leaving the industry of law enforcement in Portland. They're going to other police departments around the country. Okay? And that's because police officers here do not feel they are given the leadership that it takes for them to go out and risk their lives to protect us. You know, they don't even know who to arrest anymore because we've got a district attorney that basically says, hey, there's 10 crimes you now can commit, and you don't have to worry about being about, I mean, what is he going to do next? I mean, I was asking him, you know, in passing when I saw him last week, I said, are you going to let just anybody kiss your wife now? You know what I'm talking about? I mean, he just said, hey, you can do what you want in Portland. I'm not going to prosecute you. He took the 10 biggest crimes that occurred during protests that cops arrest people for. We're not talking about the stuff like murder and stuff like that. We're talking about crimes, right? You know, and he says he's telling law enforcement and the world, we're not interested in prosecuting. Now, does that make Portland safer? Has that made the people that are protesting here decide not to commit those crimes? You know, I mean, this mess that we're in is because we as a people in this town, all of us, we are not holding our leaders accountable. We're not getting the leadership in general that we deserve, that we expect. And that is the germ of all of this. We got a huge opportunity here to make major positive change, but we seem to not have enough people up front. Like I said, when I'm talking like this, guys, people like Carmen Rubio, people like Dan Ryan, people like Joanne, I don't think they've been there long enough for me to judge them too harshly. You understand? But we've got some people that have been in politics 50 years, and they suck. You know what I'm talking about? They've been here a long time, and they're not doing their job. And that is one of our big problems. And Daryl, like I said, Daryl, I heard he might be one of the guys retiring between now and February. I hope it's true. He's got a great home over in Nevada. He should go ahead, take his retirement money, kick back, have a great life. You know what I mean? He's not even from Oregon. He's from New Jersey. You know, go over there, enjoy the hot sun, you know, and have a good time. Have a great life. He's earned it. You know what I mean? But we need new leadership, and the police need new leadership with the union. It needs a new union leader, somebody who's going to focus on law enforcement, focus on the members, period.
Sounds great. Hey, Dwight, let's talk a bit. And I know that you're engaging, if you will, with a number of police, Portland police, because of various activities with the youth within the community and the people, if you will, and the kinds of folks that are down and out, if you will, and in many ways they got to eat, and naturally they're sharing their thoughts sometimes, because I'm sure you have that same old adage about the fish. You know, somebody they give me a handout, you say, well, look here, take this rod and reel and get yourself a few worms and go down there and catch some fish. You know what I'm saying? So you're talking with these folks every day. What do you think about the whole issue of police and possibly resolve some of the problems that we're having with them?
I believe is that at one point we had started a positive relationship community with police about 5 years ago. I was involved in that positive movement, bringing the police to the community and the community to the police, and interacting them in activity. That was away from being arrested, away from whatever the parents' problems were. And we were having basketball and doing these things, and it was beyond the basketball. We were actually building relationships between people who didn't trust the police, and now they see the police doing so many great things with their children. And I had a good group of good guys, but leadership changed on them. And when leadership changed, they told them that they could no longer support the African-American community the way that they were. And they withdrew the programming. And actually, in the last couple of years, I haven't done any programming with them. And you know, and there's a lot going on. And when things happen, I get phone calls and they ask me, well, what are you willing to do? And I'm saying, well, pretty much nothing if you're just going to start something and stop again that was benefiting growth. And I think that really, you know, when you look at the fact that we need to be able to identify with whoever's policing our community. If you're coming through my neighborhood and you're driving through here in that police car, I should feel comfortable knowing, oh, that's Officer such and such. And he comes through here all the time. And, and that's the way it was when we were young. You knew everybody. You knew Harry, even whatever he was doing, you knew everybody. But now it's become so distant because what they're doing is they're playing the politic part of it, and they're forgetting the community connection, how they need to be accepted by the community. So I think right now, if they want to restore things, they got to get back to working with the community that they are being accused of abusing and accused of killing and accused of having a different view of. If we don't sow into that community from the police perspective, how will they ever trust them?
Mm-hmm. Good point.
Bruce,
point.
May I say something?
Go on, Bob.
Right quick. On the 52nd day of the riots in Portland, here's what the news reported. Hours before what is expected to be the 53rd straight night of a protest in the city, the head of the Portland Police Union said the community has had enough. Portland Police Association President Daryl Turner, surrounded by 20 faith leaders, business owners, police officers, and neighborhood residents, held a news conference in front of the union office in North Portland. Mm-hmm. The elected officers have condoned the destruction and chaos, said Turner. They have placed the political agenda ahead of safety and welfare of the community. Mm-hmm. This must end. This is what the man was talking about. They're not allowing. They're allowing the way we used to say it. They're allowing the prisoners to run the prison, and this has to stop. And now everybody's trying to lay blame at somebody else's feet when you're not doing your job. Yep.
Hey, I saw that press conference, and you know what everybody said, including a lot of police officers? Wow. He wasn't even wearing a uniform that day.
That's right.
He looked more like a mayor.
Uniform.
Hold on.
He's the union.
Robert, he didn't even have a badge.
For you to and share this, talk about the issues that we've been talking about. Okay, it's been great. Fellas, you did a great job. Bob and Fred, let's get together. You guys pick up the tab.
Hey, Bob, I still love you. Even though you're out there in Clackamas. I got big love.
All right, looks like we're gonna end up with a nice conversation. Again, thank you very much, Steve. Did a good job as usual.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, Jack, White, Bob.
See you later, buddy.
All right, good job.
Yeah, thank you, Steve.
See you next week with the new mayor. We got a new mayor coming to town.
Thank you, Dwight. Thank you, Jack.
We got a new mayor coming to town. Sarah, she's the new mayor. Awesome. We're going to elect her.